The last day of our romantic Italy trip, my girl decided to stay behind alone. She came back 2 months later saying she's pregnant with my child. I'm pretty average, I guess. I'm in my early 30s, work in tech, and I'm one of those guys who's happiest with a cold beer, a good book, or a solid binge-watch session of whatever show everyone's hyping about that month. I wouldn't say I'm an introvert exactly, but I'm not the guy who lights up the room at parties either. More like the guy standing near the snacks, wondering how soon it's socially acceptable to leave. My dating life? Let's just say it's been hit or miss. Mostly miss. But I digress. It was Ben, my best friend since college, who dragged me to this barbecue last summer. "You need to get out more, man," he said. "You're going to turn into one of those hermits who only talks to their cat." I wasn't exactly thrilled about spending my Saturday in someone's backyard with a bunch of strangers. But hey, free food and beer are a decent bribe. Plus, Ben's been there for me through a lot, so I figured I owed him one. And that's where I met her. Jay. She was standing by the grill, wearing this oversized band tee and jean shorts, her hair pulled up in a messy bun that somehow looked effortlessly cool. She was mid-argument with the host about, get this, the proper way to marinate chicken wings. Now, I'm not exactly a wing connoisseur, but the way she talked, you'd think it was a life-or-death debate. She had this fiery, take-no-prisoners energy, and I was instantly intrigued. So, naturally, I lingered nearby, pretending to sip my beer while eavesdropping. Eventually, she noticed me and called me out. "Hey you, what's your take? Lime juice or vinegar?" she asked, holding up a half-marinated wing like it was Exhibit A in her case. I blanked for a second because who has strong opinions about this stuff? But I went with lime juice. I mean, how could you not side with her? She grinned and declared me officially on the right side of history. And just like that, we were talking. We ended up hanging out for most of the party, swapping stories about awkward family holidays, our favorite Netflix shows, and how we both secretly judge people who put pineapple on pizza. By the end of the night, she handed me her number and said, "Text me, unless you're one of those guys who waits 3 days to play it cool. In that case, don't bother." I texted her the next morning. No games. Our first date was at this quirky little cafe she loved, the kind of place that serves coffee in mismatched mugs and has board games stacked in the corner. We sat there for hours talking about everything and nothing. She told me about her job in marketing, how she loved the creative side, but hated the corporate politics. I told her about my work in tech and how I secretly dreamed of starting my own thing someday. It felt easy, like we'd known each other forever. Before I knew it, we were spending every weekend together, cooking dinner, going on long walks in the park, and binge-watching trashy reality shows just to roast the contestants. She made even the most boring stuff like grocery shopping feel like an adventure. I'd never been in a relationship that felt so fun and natural. It was like we were on the same wavelength, finishing each other's jokes and sharing that unspoken look when something ridiculous happened around us. At the time, my life felt pretty stable. I had a decent job at a mid-sized tech company, nothing too demanding. I was clocking out at 5 p.m. sharp, with plenty of time to focus on Jay and our budding relationship. My friends started joking that I was off the grid because I spent so much time with her, but honestly, I didn't care. It just felt right. We even started talking in that casual, not too serious way about maybe moving in together someday. It all seemed so perfect, like I'd finally found my person. Looking back, I guess that's the thing about the honeymoon phase. It's like living in a bubble. Everything feels light and easy, and you tell yourself this is how it's always going to be. And maybe that's why I didn't notice the cracks forming underneath the surface. Or maybe I just didn't want to see them. So like I said, everything was great for a while. We were in that sweet spot where everything feels new and exciting, but also comfortable. Jay and I had our little routines, Sunday morning coffee runs, arguing over which rom-com to watch on Friday nights, trying out new recipes, and inevitably burning at least one thing. I really thought we were building something solid. And then I got promoted. At first, it felt like a win for both of us. I mean, who doesn't want a promotion, right? I'd been busting my ass at work for years, and finally someone noticed. The title came with a nice bump in pay, too, which I figured could only be good for our future. I even joked with Jay that we could start saving for that dream trip to Italy she'd been talking about since our third date. She lit up at that, and I remember thinking, yeah, this is it. This is the life I've been working towards. But, and this is where things started to unravel. The new job wasn't just a title change. It was a whole lifestyle change. Suddenly, I wasn't clocking out at 5 p.m. anymore. I was staying late, answering emails at all hours, sitting through endless meetings with people who loved the sound of their own voices. My boss was one of those "this is a marathon, not a sprint" types, which sounds motivational until you realize it just means work harder, always harder. And I did, because I didn't know how not to. At first, Jay was super supportive. She'd wait up for me when I got home late, even if it meant eating dinner at 9:30. She'd rub my shoulders while I vented about my coworkers and tell me I was doing great. But there's only so many nights you can come home exhausted, barely able to keep your eyes open, before it starts to take a toll. On both of you, the little things started slipping. Date nights turned into me passing out on the couch halfway through a movie. Weekend plans got canceled because I had just one more thing to finish for work. I told myself it was temporary, that I was just adjusting to the new role, but weeks turned into months and nothing changed. If anything, it got worse. I started noticing the way Jay would look at me when I told her I had to work late again. Disappointment, frustration, maybe even a little resentment. She never said it outright, but I could feel the shift. And honestly, I didn't blame her. I wasn't exactly holding up my end of the relationship anymore. Then came the arguments. At first, they were small, almost laughable. Like the time I forgot to pick up her favorite ice cream on my way home because I was distracted by a work call. "It's not about the ice cream," she said, arms crossed, her voice tight. "It's about the fact that you don't listen." I apologized, promised I'd do better, but I could tell it wasn't enough. The fights got bigger after that. More personal. She'd call me out for being married to my job, and I'd snap back that I was doing it for us, for our future. "What future?" she'd shoot back. "You're never here." Those words hit harder than I wanted to admit, but instead of addressing them, I just buried myself deeper in work. Because that's what I do. I avoid, I deflect, I tell myself I'm too busy to deal with my feelings. Super healthy, I know. It wasn't all bad, though. We still had good days, moments where it felt like we were back to being us. Like one Saturday morning when we made pancakes together and ended up in a flower fight that left the kitchen looking like a war zone. Or the time we went to this outdoor concert and danced like idiots under the stars. But those moments started feeling fewer and farther between, like little islands of happiness in an ocean of tension. One night, after another particularly stupid fight, this one about whether I cared more about my laptop than her, I found myself lying awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how we got here. I'd always thought of us as a team, but lately it felt like we were on opposite sides. And for the first time, I wondered if we could actually fix it. That's when I came up with the idea for the trip to Italy. Jay had always dreamed of going there. She'd talk about it all the time. How she wanted to wander through the cobblestone streets of Florence, eat her weight in pasta, and sip wine at some little cafe overlooking the Amalfi Coast. It was one of those someday things we'd always said we'd do, but I figured, why not now? If we were going to save this relationship, we needed a reset. A chance to get away from the stress and just focus on us. So, I started planning. I cashed in some vacation days, booked the flights, found some cute little Airbnbs, and even made dinner reservations at a Michelin-starred restaurant in Rome, which, by the way, was not cheap. When I told Jay about it, she actually cried. "You did this for us?" she asked, her voice breaking a little. And in that moment, I felt like I'd finally done something right. I thought, this is it. This is how we get back to being us. So, fast forward a few weeks, and we're on a plane to Italy. It felt like a fresh start, like maybe this trip could be the thing to pull us out of the mess we'd been stuck in. Jay was practically glowing when we landed. She kept snapping pictures of everything: the airport, the cab ride, even the weirdly fancy vending machine at the train station. I hadn't seen her that excited in ages, and honestly, it was contagious. For the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about work or deadlines or all the ways I'd screwed up. It was just us. The first few days were magical. I know that sounds cheesy, but it's true. We wandered through the streets of Rome, ate way too much gelato, and laughed at how bad my Italian was. We even had one of those cliché moments at the Trevi Fountain where we tossed coins in and made wishes. I won't lie, I wish we could fix things. By the time we got to Florence, I was starting to think the trip was actually working. We felt like a team again, like we were reconnecting. One night, we found this tiny family-run restaurant tucked away in an alley. The food was incredible, like life-changing pasta levels of good, and we ended up staying there for hours just talking and drinking wine. For the first time in a long time, I felt like the version of us I'd fallen in love with was still there, just buried under all the stress and fights. I thought, maybe this really is the reset we needed. But the thing about magical moments is they don't last forever. It started subtly at first. Jay would get distracted in the middle of conversations, her eyes darting to her phone a little too often. When I asked her about it, she brushed it off, saying she was just checking messages from her family. I didn't think much of it. She was close with her mom and sister, and I figured they just wanted updates on the trip. But then she started slipping away for alone time. At first, it was little things like stepping out for a walk after breakfast or spending an hour browsing shops while I hung back at the hotel. Again, not a big deal. I mean, who doesn't need a little space sometimes? But it felt off. The real turning point came in Venice, near the end of the trip. We were sitting by the Grand Canal, watching the gondolas go by, when Jay turned to me and said, "I need to tell you something." My stomach immediately sank. You know that feeling when you're bracing for bad news, but you have no idea what's coming? Yeah, that. She took a deep breath and said, "I've been thinking a lot about my life lately. About what I want, who I am, and I feel like I need time to figure that out." I stared at her, not sure where this was going. "Okay," I said slowly. "What does that mean?" She hesitated, like she was choosing her words carefully. "I think I want to stay in Italy, just for a little while, to find myself." I legit thought she was joking at first. Like, who says stuff like that in real life? But the look on her face told me she was dead serious. "Wait," I said, trying to process. "You want to stay here? Alone?" "Yeah," she said softly. "I feel like I need to do this for me. I've been feeling lost, and I think this trip made me realize that. I wish I could tell you I handled it gracefully, but I didn't. I was too blindsided to even pretend to be cool about it." "So what? You're just going to stay here indefinitely? On what money, Jay? You don't even speak Italian." My voice came out sharper than I intended, but I was spiraling. This wasn't part of the plan. This was supposed to be our trip, our reset. "I don't know yet," she said, her tone defensive now. "I'll figure it out. I just know I can't go back to the way things were." That hit me like a punch to the gut. "The way things were?" I repeated. "You mean us?" She didn't answer right away, just looked out at the water. "I don't know," she finally said. "Maybe." I don't remember much of what I said after that. I think I told her I couldn't support this, financially or emotionally. That if she wanted to stay here and find herself, she'd have to do it without me. She got upset, accused me of not understanding her, of not supporting her dreams. It turned into a full-blown argument, right there on the canal. Tourists were definitely staring, but I didn't care. My head was spinning. I felt like the rug had been yanked out from under me. In the end, I told her I was going home. I had work, responsibilities, a life to get back to. I wasn't going to just drop everything and play along with whatever midlife crisis she was having. She said she didn't expect me to. And just like that, we went back to the hotel, packed our things, and the next morning I got on a plane back to the States. Alone. I wish I could say I felt some kind of closure as the plane took off, but mostly I just felt numb. Part of me was still hoping she'd change her mind, that she'd call me and say, "Forget it, I'm coming home." But that call never came. At least, not the one I was expecting. So, I got back home, and I tried to settle back into normal life. The first few days were weird, like, I'd wake up and instinctively check my phone for a text from Jay, forgetting for half a second that she wasn't just in another city. She was in another country. I kept telling myself that maybe she just needed time, that this was some eat, pray, love phase, and she'd come back when she was done finding herself. I mean, people don't just stay in Italy, right? That's the kind of thing you read about in some influencer's Instagram caption, not something that actually happens to people you know. But the days turned into weeks, and the radio silence from Jay got louder. Sure, she'd text me every now and then, pictures of Venice or Florence, little updates like, "Found a cute cafe today," or "The pasta here is unreal." But it all felt surface level, like she was keeping me at arm's length. No real conversations, no "I miss you," no "let's talk about us." Just distance. And while she was off living her best Italian life, I was back home, drowning in work and trying not to think too hard about what the hell had just happened to my relationship. Ben was the first person I told when I got back. He listened, nodded a lot, and eventually said, "Dude, that's insane. She just stayed? Who even does that?" I didn't have an answer for him. I still don't. But here's the thing. Jay didn't just stay in Italy. Oh no, that would have been too simple. Turns out, she was up to some stuff while she was over there. And I didn't find out until she came back. It all started unraveling about 2 months after I got home. I was sitting in my living room, halfway through a rerun of Parks and Rec, when my phone buzzed. It was Ben. I almost didn't answer. I was exhausted and not in the mood for one of his "let's go grab a beer" pep talks, but something made me pick up. And wow, am I glad I did. "Yo," he said, his voice low like he was about to drop some classified intel. "Are you sitting down?" Yeah," I said, already bracing myself. "It's about Jay." My stomach immediately dropped. "What about her?" He hesitated for a second, like he was trying to figure out how to phrase whatever he was about to say. "Okay, so, you remember my cousin Sophia? The one who's been backpacking through Europe? Yeah, what about her?" I asked, impatient now. "Well, she was in Florence last week, and guess who she ran into?" I didn't even have to answer. My gut already knew where this was going. "Jay." "Bingo," Ben said. "But, that's not the crazy part." "Dude, just spit it out." I snapped, my heart racing. "She wasn't alone," he said. "Sophia said she was with some guy. Pretty cozy, from what she described." I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. "What do you mean, cozy?" "Like holding hands, laughing, looking all couple Y," Ben said awkwardly. "Sophia didn't get a name or anything, but she said they definitely weren't just friends." I didn't say anything for what felt like forever. My mind was racing, trying to process what I'd just heard. Jay was seeing someone? While I was back here, trying to figure out how to fix things? "You sure it was her?" I finally asked, my voice tight. "Positive," Ben said. "Sophia even said Jay mentioned she was staying in Italy for personal reasons." I hung up not long after that, telling Ben I needed to think. And think I did. 4 hours. Part of me wanted to call Jay right then and there, demand an explanation. But another part of me, the part that had been feeling like something was off for weeks, wasn't even surprised. Hurt, yeah. Angry, absolutely. But surprised? Not really. A couple weeks after I got that call from Ben about Jay being all cozy with someone in Florence, she finally texted me. "Hey, I'm back home now. Can we talk?" Seeing her name pop up on my screen was like a punch to the gut. I'd spent weeks trying to push her out of my mind, burying myself in work, going out with friends, and basically doing anything to avoid thinking about her. But there she was, just casually asking to talk, like she hadn't completely blindsided me in Italy and ghosted me for months. I almost didn't reply. I was this close to deleting the message and pretending I hadn't seen it. But curiosity got the better of me. Or maybe I just wanted closure. Who knows? Either way, I agreed to meet her at this coffee shop we used to go to when things were good between us. When I got there, she was already waiting at a corner table, sipping on some fancy latte. She looked different. I don't know how to explain it, but she had this calm, almost serene vibe about her, like she'd just come back from some meditation retreat. Meanwhile, I felt like I'd been through the ringer. She smiled when she saw me, but it didn't feel warm. It felt calculated. "Hey," she said, waving me over. I sat down, folding my arms across my chest. "All right, Jay. What's this about?" I wasn't in the mood for small talk. She sighed, looking down at her drink for a moment before meeting my eyes. "I wanted to see you because there's something I need to tell you. And it's important." My stomach churned. I could feel it coming. The bad news, the explanation I wasn't sure I even wanted anymore. "Go on," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She took a deep breath, like she was summoning the courage to say it. "I'm pregnant," she finally said, her voice soft. Time froze. I swear, I actually forgot how to breathe for a second. "What?" I said, my voice cracking. "I'm pregnant," she repeated, her hands clutching the edge of the table. My brain was already racing, doing the math, trying to figure out if this could even be possible. "And it's mine?" I asked, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. She hesitated, just for a second, but it was long enough for me to know something was off. "Of course it's yours," she said, her voice a little too confident, like she was trying to convince herself as much as me. Something in her tone made my skin crawl. I don't know if it was the hesitation or just the way she said it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't telling me the whole truth. Still, I couldn't exactly accuse her of lying without proof, so I just nodded, trying to process what this meant. "So, what now?" I asked. She launched into this whole spiel about how she wanted to make things work between us, how she was ready to leave behind her time in Italy and focus on building a real future together. It all sounded so rehearsed, so perfectly packaged that it only made me more suspicious. But at the same time, I couldn't just walk away, not without knowing for sure. Over the next few days, I started piecing things together. Little details she let slip during our conversations didn't add up, like how she avoided talking about what she'd been doing in Italy for the last few months, or how she got defensive when I asked if she'd met anyone while she was there. And then there was her sudden interest in starting fresh with me, which felt way too convenient for someone who, not long ago, wanted to find herself halfway across the world. That's when I decided to call Ben. "Hey," I said, "do you still have your cousin Sophia's number?" "Yeah, why?" Ben asked, clearly confused. "I need to ask her about Jay," I said. There was a pause. "You're really going to dig into this, huh?" "Yeah," I said firmly. "I have to." Ben gave me Sophia's number, and I reached out to her that same day. I felt a little sleazy about it, but I needed answers. When I explained the situation to Sophia, she didn't hold back. "Oh yeah, your girlfriend, well, I guess she was definitely seeing someone in Florence," Sophia said. "I saw them together more than once. She seemed really into him." "Did you get a name?" I asked, my throat tight. "No, but he looked like a local," she said. "Dark hair, tall, kind of artsy looking." They were all over each other. I thanked her and hung up, my suspicions now fully confirmed. But I still didn't know how to confront Jay. I mean, it's not like I could just accuse her out of nowhere, right? So, I decided to sit on it for a couple days and see if anything else came to light. And then, out of nowhere, I got a text from Jay's friend, Kay. "Hey, I think we need to talk," the message read. I called her immediately. Kay and I had never been super close, but she'd always been honest, almost to a fault. "What's up?" I asked as soon as she picked up. There was a long pause before she spoke. "Look, I don't know how to say this, but Jay's been lying to you." My heart sank. "About what?" "About the baby," she said bluntly. "It's not yours. She knows it's not yours. She even did a paternity test to confirm it." I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. "What?" I said, barely able to get the word out. "She was planning to tell you it was yours," Kay continued. "She thought you'd take responsibility and help her out financially. But I couldn't let her go through with it. You deserve to know the truth." I didn't even know what to say. My mind was racing, my chest tight with anger and betrayal. "Why are you telling me this?" I finally asked. "Because you're a good guy," Kay said, "and you don't deserve to be dragged into her mess." After I got off the phone with Kay, I didn't sleep much that night. I just kept replaying everything Jay had ever said to me, trying to piece together when the lies started. Was it back in Italy? Before that? How much of our relationship had been real? And how much of it had just been her using me as her safety net? By the time the sun came up, I knew I couldn't let this sit. I needed to confront her, but I also knew I had to be careful. If I came in guns blazing, it would just give her room to deny everything or flip the script on me. I wasn't about to give her that chance. So, I waited a day to cool off, get my thoughts together, and figure out how to approach it. When I finally texted Jay, I kept it short. "Can we talk? I have some things I need to say." She replied almost instantly. "Of course. Do you want to meet at the coffee shop again?" I said yes, and a couple hours later, I was sitting across from her trying to keep my emotions in check. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her cup and avoiding eye contact, which only confirmed what I already knew. She could feel the walls closing in. "So," she said, forcing a smile, "what's on your mind?" I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "I know the baby isn't mine." Her eyes widened, and for a split second, I saw raw panic flash across her face. But she recovered quickly, forcing a confused laugh. "What are you talking about? Of course it's yours." "Don't," I said, cutting her off. My voice was calm, but firm. "Don't insult me by lying to my face. I know the truth, Jay." She froze, her hands gripping her cup so tightly I thought it might crack. I don't know what you mean," she stammered, but her voice wavered. I stared at her, letting the silence hang heavy between us. I didn't need to say how I knew. I didn't need to give her an out by dragging Kay or anyone else into this. The truth was out now, and it was on her to own up to it. Finally, she sighed and looked down at the table. "How did you find out?" she whispered. "It doesn't matter how," I said evenly. "What matters is that you were going to let me believe it was mine. You were going to let me take responsibility for a child that isn't even mine. Do you have any idea how messed up that is?" She flinched like my words physically hurt her. "I wasn't trying to hurt you," she said quietly. "I didn't know what to do. I thought if I told you it was yours, we could, I don't know, figure it out together." I leaned forward, my voice sharp now. "Figure what out, Jay? How to build a life based on a lie. You were going to trap me in a situation I had no business being in, all because you were too scared to deal with the consequences of your own choices." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't feel bad for her. Not this time. She'd made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. I didn't want to lose you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've always been the one person I could count on, and I was scared. I thought if I told you the truth, you'd leave, and I didn't know if I could handle that." I shook my head, letting out a bitter laugh. "So instead of being honest, you decided to lie and hope for the best? Did you really think that was going to work, Jay? Did you think I wouldn't figure it out eventually?" "I don't know," she cried, the tears spilling over now. "I wasn't thinking, okay? I was desperate. I made a mistake." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my own emotions in check. A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday or saying something you didn't mean in the heat of the moment. What you did wasn't a mistake, Jay. It was calculated. You knew the baby wasn't mine, and you were going to let me believe it was because it was easier for you. She didn't say anything, just sat there crying into her hands. Part of me wanted to stand up and walk out right then and there, but I knew I had to say my piece. "I'm done," I said firmly. "I'm done with the lies, the manipulation, all of it. I deserve better than this, Jay. And you know it." She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. "Please," she said, her voice breaking. "Please don't do this. I can change. I'll make it right, I swear." I shook my head. "It's too late for that. I trusted you, and you broke that trust in the worst way possible. There's no coming back from this." I stood up, tossing a couple of bills on the table to cover my drink. "Good luck with everything," I said, my voice flat. And then I walked out, leaving her sitting there, crying into her hands. The first few days after that were rough. Even though I knew I'd made the right decision, it still hurt like hell to walk away from someone I'd once cared so much about. But every time I started to second-guess myself, I reminded myself of the truth. She wasn't the person I thought she was. Over time, the hurt started to fade. I focused on work, spent more time with friends, and even started going to therapy to unpack all the baggage I didn't realize I was carrying. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. As for Jay, I don't know what happened to her after that. I blocked her number and her social media, not because I hated her, but because I knew I needed to move on. She wasn't my problem anymore, and I wasn't going to let her drag me back into her drama.